print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Margaret Lauber, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the current issues of the Lockport Union-Sun Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We're going to work backwards today. We're going to start with the latest issue I have, which was Saturday and Sunday, July 11th and 12th. And it's canvas underfoot. Artists transformed Canal Street into colorful outdoor gallery, and the kids were having a ball. They were all coloring. So if you did take a walk down a sidewalk of colored white with white chalk, sounds like fun. The studio had covered that, starting at 9 o'clock. Jessica Tominello, Eric Greenwald, a certified master chalk artist from Pittsburgh, and artists of all ages were there, and they showed their creativity at the city's annual chalk walk on Canal Street. And hope you got a chance to get by there. And the town of Niagara, varied concerns in Niagara. Town of Niagara private testing performed in the yard of Fox Avenue homeowner Carolyn Johnson showed radioactivity levels more than 120 times higher than federal public exposure standards and 1,200 times greater than New York State soil cleanup guidelines. Johnson and Lexi Hawk, a neighbor whose Chester Avenue property is also suspected of containing high levels of radioactivity material, renewed their call on Friday for Governor Kathy Hochul and state environmental regulators from the New York State Department of Conservation to do something about it and quickly. Johnson and Hawk led a press conference at John Nielsen Park where they asked Kathy Hawk to declare their neighborhood a state Superfund site and to accommodate requests for relocations to safer confines. And in other news, a Newfane man pled guilty to vehicular manslaughter. A Newfane man charged in a fatal one-car crash on Lockport Junction Road last summer has pleaded guilty to a vehicular manslaughter charge. Thomas Summers Jr., 53 of Newfane, pled guilty Thursday to second-degree vehicular manslaughter in a New York State court. Summers admitted to driving his truck while impaired by the combined influence of cocaine, methamphetamines, and oxycodone, which caused a July 16, 2025 crash that took the life of his passenger, Rodolfo Espinoza, 48, of Lockport, on Lockport Junction Road in the town of Lockport. Shortly after 7 p.m., Niagara County Sheriff's deputies responded to the crash in the area of 5151 Lockport Junction Road, where a 2011 Chevy Silverado that had been heading south veered off the side of the road, struck a utility pole, and rolled over. Espinoza was trapped in the vehicle and died at the scene, despite efforts from first responders. Summers was determined to be under the influence of a drug recognition expert and charged with a felony count of second-degree vehicular manslaughter and driving while impaired by drugs. After receiving treatment from Lockport Medical Hospital for injuries sustained in the crash, he was remanded to the Erie County Correctional Facility following the crash. And then there is a time to remember. We are to share our wonderful father, Samuel Sam Sanson. He passed away on Thursday. That was in the beginning of July. So we have Mary Hunt, the everyday cheapskate. We read from her once in a while. She said frugality. It's a word that for many people screams deprivation, poverty. I get letters from readers who say they've had it with trying to live below their means and never have anything they love. What's the point of all of this deprivation if it just makes me feel even more miserable? Was the way one woman closed her letter. Well, look, I don't know your particular situation, but I do know this. If you adjust your attitude, get a plan, and let nothing stop you from reaching it, you can have the things you love. Frugality isn't just about cutting costs. There has to be a specific reason involved. And it can't be something like, I want to be rich. Frugality is about scrimping and cutting costs like crazy on the things you really don't care about so that you can spend on the things you do love. It's a matter of deciding what's really important and what's not. And I mean on a daily basis as a way of life. You have to get out of your spending coma and into conscious spending, where every expenditure counts and every dollar matters. I could give you all kinds of examples of how this might work, but let's take something as simple as paper towels. A couple of rolls tucked in with the weekly groceries may not seem like such a big deal. They're convenient, but do you really love paper towels enough to sacrifice things that you really do love in order to have that roll of paper towels always at the ready? I sure don't. I find that a collection of bar mops, which are small tray cloth towels available in the automotive aisle at Costco or any number of places online, last forever and handle all the tasks that we believe paper towels do. Experts say the average household uses 1 to 5 to 2 rolls of paper towels per week, as long as at a going rate of about $2 a roll. That's more than $200 a year. Since I don't have paper towels, there's $200 I can divert to something else. Well, makes a lot of sense. Okay, we have some fairy tale ends at Wimbledon. Despite loss, Arthur Ferry's career is just getting started. In London, Arthur Fray has made some adjustments to make following his star return to Wimbledon, starting with his vacation planning. Ferry clearly didn't see a semi-final run coming. Did anyone? Because the British wild card expected to be in Greece this past week rather than on center court earning standing ovations. He said, "I was meaning to be coming back from holiday today," the smiling Ferry said after losing to Alexander Zverev 7-6, 6-2, 6-4 on Friday. So Spain edges Belgium in the World Cup quarterfinals. In Inglewood, California, Mikel Moreno scored in the 88th minute on a rebound yielded by backup Belgium goalkeeper Sene Lamas. And Spain advanced to the World Cup semifinals with a 2-1 victory on Friday. Good for Spain. So let's go to our next issue, which is July 9th, which was Thursday. We're going backwards, remember. So, The Perfect Plots. And Lockport in Bloom features fiestas of flowers this weekend. That was on July 9th weekends. That was a couple weekends ago, but the flowers are still there if you wanted to go take a look at them. Or smell them. I bet you they smell pretty. So, see or be part of Alcott's festival last weekend. They had a festival. Wow, there's a lot of stuff that went on. And their bulletin board, I think most of that stuff has already happened on the bulletin board, so we'll continue on from there. Let's see what else we have in here. So, 250 years from America, 1955. There's an article, Notable Events in America. Polio, also known as infantile paralysis, has existed for thousands of years. In 1789, an English doctor named Michael Underwood provided the first known clinical description of the disease. In 1840, a German physicist named Jacob Hein categorized polio as a medical condition, and the first major outbreak in the United States occurred in 1894. Polio can present in 3 forms: abortive, non-paralytic, and paralytic. Paralytic polio is the most severe form and can lead to destroyed motor neurons, paralysis, and in some cases, death. Franklin Roosevelt, who later would become president of the United States, suffered from the disease, which he contracted at the age of 39 in August of 1921. At the time, little was known about polio, and Roosevelt was surprised to learn that a middle-aged person could be diagnosed with the disease, as it was the most commonly associated with children. Despite his illness, Roosevelt persevered through the challenges it presented and was able to serve his country. In 1949, in San Angelo, Texas, polio cases were on the rise. A child living in the town had contracted poliomyelitis, which we now refer to by a shortened form named polio. Days later, 25 additional cases of the disease in children were enough to raise concern. The death count began rising, and the city health officer, Dr. R.E. Evans, informed the public that polio had topped epidemic proportions. By June of that year, the case count had reached 61, and the town council voted to close all indoor meeting places for the following weeks. Though polio had spread across the world, the worst outbreaks occurred in Western Europe, Canada, Australia, and the United States. Polio peaked during the middle of the Cold War. Many Americans thought cleanliness was the key to combating the disease. Several companies used that to believe that their advantage when selling their products, referring to them as polio insurance. However, keeping things tidy did not bring about the prevention for which so many people had hoped. The National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, otherwise known as the March of Dimes, sent 6 polio experts to San Angelo. They provided funds and aftercare supplies. They also took tissue and stool samples from patients in an attempt to assist polio researchers finding a cure. We will conquer polio soon because became one of the most popular mantras of the late 40s. By 1949, approximately 40,000 polio cases were reported in the United States. However, it was also during that same year that a major breakthrough occurred. 3 American researchers at Children's Hospital of Boston, John Enders, Thomas Weller, and Frederick Robbins, found an effective method for growing poliovirus in human tissue. That discovery paved the way for the development of the polio vaccine. For their great achievement, the 3 received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1954. So during the early 1950s, researchers were able to use the electronic microscope to view the poliovirus. American physician Jonas Salk developed a vaccine, which he tested on himself and his family in 1953. Roughly a year later, Salk vaccinated 1.6 million children in the United States, Canada, and Finland. On April 12, 1955, the University of Michigan held a press conference. A scientist named Thomas Francis Jr. declared Salk's vaccine 80 to 90% effective, and the U.S. government licensed it that same day. However, during an interview later that year, when questioned about who owned the patent to the polio vaccine, Salk replied, "Well, the people. I would say there's no patent. Could you patent the sun?" By 1961, polio cases had dropped from the tens of thousands to 161. Okay, in other news, archaeologists unearthed artifacts at Pennsylvania battle site. Legionnaire, Pennsylvania, evidence from a battle fought 268 years ago is being unearthed near Fort Ligonier. An archaeologist-led team has been working at the site of a famous friendly fire tragedy involving George Washington, finding hundreds of 18th century artifacts that weave a tale vital to the U.S. history. Now, the team is hoping to find a mass grave of 40 fallen Virginians. Although well documented, no one was certain of the exact location of the battle that took place outside the walls of the fort one cold November night. It could have been anywhere in what was then highly congested area of frontier briefly claimed by the French. In 2021, we started talking about trying to find the location of this friendly fire incident, said Mary Manges, executive director of Fort Ligonier. We talk about it every day on tours because it's an important part of the fort's story and how it really was this trajectory-changing moment in the Forbes campaign. We kind of got tired of calling it the presumed site. Historians had an idea of where it might be, but we needed to do archaeology to have proof of that. So during the French and Indian War, British General John Forbes' job was to drive the French out of western Pennsylvania and their new fort at what is now Point State Park in downtown Pittsburgh. 7,000 troops and Harvey artillery pieces were strung out along 250-mile road carved out of the wilderness. Instead of attacking Fort Duquesne, Forbes decided to sit tight along Loyalhanna Creek at the newly constructed Fort Ligonier for the impending winter of 1758 to 59. What happened was late on the day on November 12th, General Forbes is alerted at Fort Ligonier that there's a French and Indian raiding party about 2 miles from the fort. He sends out Colonel Mercer with about 500 Virginians. An hour later, they can still hear musket fire at the fort, and they realize that he might need some backup. So Washington volunteers take his 500 Virginians to aid Mercer. Western Pennsylvania is where 26-year-old Washington learned how to fight. He learned the hard way through defeat and struggle, said Manges, and he would learn a valuable lesson that day. Instead of going the same path Mercer takes, he goes down along the creek, hoping to surround them, Manges said. But the French and their native allies are pretty good at moving in, causing chaos and moving back out, and that's what they've done. And that's what leaves in that void are the 2 Virginia regiments in the darkness and potential fog. And they open fire on one another. Washington is in command of all 1,000. This is his leadership under which this event is happening. Washington put himself in a deadly crossfire to try to stop the melee. In his papers titled Remarks, Washington wrote, "During the time the army lay at Loyalhanna, a circumstance occurred which involved the life of G.W. in as much jeopardy as it had ever seen there before, and G.W. never was in more imminent danger by being between 2 fires, knocking up with their sword the presented pieces." He said that and wrote that after the American Revolution, so that the pretty profound coming from Washington, who had his many brushes with death to that point, said Manges. Unfortunately, 40 Virginians are dead or wounded from this engagement. The good thing is, they captured a French deserter who basically gives them all the intelligence they have been lacking, and on November 12th, General Forbes takes back his decision from the day before, and they begin their march to Fort Duquesne. And in other news, Watchdog. The budget allows Hochul to spend $1.5 billion without review. So in this year's state budget, lawmakers quietly exempted nearly $1.5 billion from key oversight, allowing Governor Kathy Hochul's administration to ink an array of future contracts without approval from the state's fiscal watchdog. An analysis conducted by the government reform group Reinvent Albany and shared exclusively with New York Focus found the exemption was applied to a wide range of taxpayer-funded programs, including $500,000 for a golf tournament, $40 million for projects to promote swimming, and $212 million to expand rural health care options through a program that includes expanding telehealth and addressing staffing challenges. Comptroller Tom DiNapoli's office normally exerts independent oversight over executive branch contracts. This approval process promotes fair competition in the bidding process, helps avoid wasteful spending, and saves taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars a year, according to DiNapoli's office. But the executive branch has at times bristled at this added layer of bureaucracy that can delay projects, and the Hochul administration has chipped away at DiNapoli's authority in recent years. So in a budget passed several years ago, for example, lawmakers explicitly exempted a contract to oversee a multi-million-dollar home care program from review by DiNapoli's office. The transition has since allegedly led to turmoil in the home care program. Democrat lawmakers have expressed concern about the contract's bidding process and at times have struggled to get answers about its details. Before this year's state budget was passed in May, DiNapoli's office typically had the power to approve or reject executive branch contracts of over $50,000. In this year's budget, Hochul's office sought to raise that threshold to $300,000 for certain contracts, and after negotiations with the legislator, the figure for some contracts were raised to $150,000. There you go. So the Adirondacks, in another news, Adirondack Land Trust add up to 2,390 acres in Chesterfield. The Adirondack Land Trust purchased 2,390 acres in the town of Chesterfield this month for permanent conservation. The vast forested parcel ranges in elevation from 580 to 1,615 feet above sea level and features Drake Mountain, 12 ponds, 6.5 miles of streams, including Little Trout Brook, and 126 acres of wetland. Drake Mountain, with its prominent profile and rocky outcrops, is a well-known feature of the town of Chesterfield's landscape. Adirondack Land Trust Executive Director Mike Carr said in a press release, visible from the waters of Lake Champlain and across scenic farmlands, it stands like a vibrant island of forest. It harbors rare and uncommon plant species unique to the Champlain Valley and promotes habitats for beaver, bobcat, white-tailed deer, black bear, and other wildlife. The largest pond on the parcel hosts an active green-blue heron nesting area known as a rookery. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Lockport Union-Sun Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Now we're going to move on to our Tuesday, July 7th issue. So, A Hunger to Better God's Kingdom, Lieutenant Joshua Wesby, the Salvation Army's new Corps officer and pastor, wants to bring a revival to the city's core. Wesby has been familiarized himself with Lockport's chapter since spring and has a vision for expanded programming that grows the congregation and reaches out to youth. Seminary students at the Salvation Army College for training, officer training, receive their postings in May. Wesby said so they can use the location as a model for final projects on operations and program planning. The folder Wesby received on Lockport indicated that the Sister Mary Loretta Memorial Community Soup Kitchen serves 200 people a day, 7 days a week. Wesby said the food pantry serves 300 people daily when it's open Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. He wasn't surprised by those numbers, he said. I come from a Corps in Brooklyn, and they'd have a line of shopping carts around the block, he said. A lot of people have families that need assistance. There's just a huge homeless population here that needs attention. Chris Garrett, the Corps' longtime community center director, snagged Wesby to lead morning prayer Monday as he entered the building. Garrett explained to those gathered that the Salvation Army is a church as well as a service center, and Wesby is the pastor. So the Amazon construction was completed in the town of Niagara. With outside construction work done in Amazon's Town of Niagara Fulfillment Center, interior work is currently being wrapped up ahead of the planning opening. Things are moving along well at our Niagara Fulfillment Center, and we're excited about the progress, Amazon spokesperson Mark Hines said this week. Good. So, no bang big enough to protect pen-reared fish from cormorants. Friday's firework wasn't, that was the 4th of July, wasn't this big this year. The first big bangs along Lake Ontario. State Natural Resources agencies use pyrotechnics in April and May to haze double-crested cormorants. I never heard of them. They look like a black heron or something. They're mostly bottle rockets used to scare them off. They recently stocked fish, and these cormorants are eating the fish, I guess. Well, it's been an excellent spring fishing season. Frank Campbell, Sort Fishing Promotions Coordinator for Niagara County, cormorants seriously undermine fishery stockings efforts by being effective predators of young fish. Oh. Yeah, they look like big black herons. And we have some obituaries in this issue. And this is a July 7th issue, which was Tuesday, I think last Tuesday. So Jeffrey Higgins Barker passed away on July 1st. Charles Morello passed away on, he was a graduate of Lockport Senior School. He passed away on July 2nd. Robert Thurber passed away Saturday, June 27th. Newbecker, Douglas A., his family was wishing him a happy anniversary in heaven. And then there's a Joseph D. Raymino, who was 79 in Lockport, passed away on July 2nd also. So, in state and region news, a Rochester man is suing ICE after agents visit his home A Rochester resident sued the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement for sending federal officers to his house with a warning over an email he sent to the agency's one-time head. David Strever, who is a U.S. citizen, was on a trip to Finland when two officers showed up to his Rochester home in June and presented his wife with a warning notice informing him that the email he sent months earlier was considered a threat, his attorney said. Strever sent the email in January to Todd Lyons, then the acting director of ICE, after an immigration officer fatally shot Minneapolis resident Renee Good during an anti-ICE demonstration. In the email, Strever called Lyons a monstrous human being who will never know peace. He said the agency violated his First Amendment rights in a lawsuit filed Monday in Washington, D.C. Strever is one of at least two residents of upstate New York who was served with a federal warning in June in the wake of criticizing ICE online. The Philadelphia-based Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression is representing Strever and said it filed the lawsuit because Strever's right to free expression was violated. This is very clearly within the protection of the First Amendment, said Adam Stengvall, an attorney with the foundation. It was in the context of political speech. Representatives for ICE previously declined to comment on the warning to Strever, citing an ongoing investigation, and the agency did not immediately comment Monday. The suit also names Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen, whose office also did not immediately comment. ICE investigators all credible threats towards its employees and officers, including threats to the ICE director, the agency said in a statement last week. The entity of the three-paragraph email, which carried the subject line, "What's next?" and referenced a leader in Nazi Germany. You are a monstrous human being and will go down in history as America's Reinhard Heydrich the Butcher. The way you are protecting the obvious execution in Minnesota, even as we see the videos, we learn to your downfall. Even Trump will turn on you before the end, and you will be a sad, despised man who eats himself alive with shame at your own pathetic weakness. You will never know peace. You will seek to lose yourself to escape the burden of knowledge, the truth about yourself. But wherever you go, you will find yourself. You will be torment yourself until your last days on earth. So, federal agents also attempted to confront Strever in a hotel in New York when he did all this, and he returned from Finland, but they were turned away by hotel staff. Good for the staff. Good grief. And other news. Home health aides win $162 million in a wage theft settlement. So the company that runs New York State's funded home care program has agreed to pay its workers $162 million to settle a wage theft lawsuit filed last year. So the deal, which must be approved by a federal judge, is one of the largest wage-related payouts in New York's history. According to lawyers Hugh Baran of Katz Banks Kuman LLP and Michael Diller of the Legal Aid Society, who are part of the legal team that represented the plaintiffs. It could benefit as many as 200,000 home health aides with average payouts of nearly $700 each, equivalent to a week's pay. We're really proud of the results and what it will mean for those home care workers who work so hard to take care of their loved ones. Those aides are employed as part of the Consumer-Directed Personal Assistant Program, a New York State program that allows disabled people to receive state-funded home care, often from their own family members. Since last year, the program has been run by the private company Public Partnerships LLC, which was selected by Governor Kathy Hochul's administration. The aides sued PPL for wage theft, and the company will now be responsible for the $162 million payment. Wow. And then there was a swimmer that was bitten on the foot at New York Beach in a suspected shark attack. A swimmer that was, let's see, this is Tuesday, the Friday before this came out. A swimmer was bitten on the foot in a suspected shark attack Friday at a New York beach, prompting authorities to temporarily close the beach. The attack at Jones Beach comes a day after multiple shark sightings were reported at other New York beaches. The person was swimming at Jones Beach State Park, Field 6, when they suffered lacerations on their foot, according to the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and historic preservation. Lifeguards responded immediately, and an ambulance took the victim to a hospital to be treated for non-life-threatening injuries, according to the department. Swimming was suspended while officials searched for sharks and other dangerous marine life. After an hour of searching, none were found, and swimming was allowed to resume, though restricted to wading up to swimmers' waist. New York State officials on Thursday reported multiple shark sightings at Rockaway Beach in Queens and imposed intermittent beach closures. New York City Emergency Management also issued a warning advising of the closures and urging beachgoers to follow the guidance from lifeguards. Wow. I think if I heard that, I would go swimming in New York City's beaches. And in other news, Obamacare rules shrank dramatically in many states over the past year, the new federal data shows. So in New York, states across the country saw steep drops in the number of people covered by the Affordable Care Act over the past year, with Ohio and Oklahoma each losing nearly one-third of enrollees, according to new federal data that provides the first complete 50-state breakdown of sharp enrollment declines following the January expiration of enhanced subsidies. The data posted in late June by the Trump administration and first reported on by the Associated Press reveals how changes in each state's insured population led to around 2.6 million fewer Americans having Obamacare in February compared with the same time last year. It captures not only how many people signed up for or were automatically re-enrolled in plans in 2026, but how many paid their first monthly premiums to keep coverage, according to Cynthia Cox, a vice president and director of the ACA program at the Healthcare Research Profit, KFF. Reviewed the data. She said it accounts for people who were retroactively removed from the coverage after a non-payment grace period ended. This is the first time we've been state-level data that shows how much ACA marketplace enrollment truly fell, she said. It's in line with our expectations, but it does show a very steep drop in the number of people with ACA coverage. Also, in other news, Medicaid funding is resuming for Planned Parenthood after being cut off for almost a year. So Planned Parenthood and two smaller regional abortion providers are resuming billing Medicaid for services other than abortion after being cut off for almost a year. The defunding, which was mandated in President Donald Trump's big tax and policy law last year, has been blamed and the closure of multiple clinics as well as reduction of the number of Planned Parenthood patients being screened for breast cancer or tested for sexually transmitted infections. The Medicaid billing was allowed to resume Sunday. The restored funding does not mean the battle over federal abortion policy has ended, and not all services that were cut will return. Here's what to know about the situation. Well, many abortion providers, including Planned Parenthood affiliates, have struggled financially since 2022's Supreme Court decision that overturned Roe v. Wade and allowed state abortion bans to be enforced. Clinics have closed in states with abortion bans and restrictions as well as those without. Planned Parenthood says its affiliates have closed nearly 30 of its roughly 600 clinics over the past year, citing the funding change as a key reason. Over the period, affiliates dispensed about 25% fewer packs of birth control pills and conducted about 20% fewer breast cancer exams than the previous year. Many patients, especially in places where healthcare can be hard to access, may not have had care at all because of the defunding, the organization says. Planned Parenthood Association spokesperson Angela said that the cuts have also led to limited abortion access in some places. Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin halted abortions for about a month, then dropped its status as an essential community provider so it could resume seeking reimbursement. Trump says that Walmart cuts prices at his request, but Walmart's statement admits administration's role. Oh dear. President Donald Trump on Monday sought to take credit for recent price cuts by Walmart, but a statement by the retailer made no mention of the administration's involvement in his decision. The president has faced public backlash over inflation rising during his watch, as prices climbed initially in the aftermath of his tariffs and later with the start of the Iran war in late February. Trump described a recent bipartisan measure to trim housing costs as a yawn and tried to blame the Democrats for inflation staying elevated. Going into the November midterm elections for control of Congress, Trump has sought to deride Democrats as communists who would have the government interfere with private companies. And community and features. A child can drown in seconds. Doctors want more families to be prepared. So in New York, doctors and others are sounding an alarm. More U.S. children have been drowning in recent years. When drowning occurs, seconds matter, said Dr. Shenoy, the lead author of a recent American Academy of Pediatrics warning. Quick rescue and resuscitation can mean the difference between life, death, and lifelong disability. About 4,000 to 5,000 Americans drown each year. Most are adults who die in natural bodies of water, such as lakes, ponds, or oceans. But statistically speaking, drowning is a much larger danger to children, as the number one cause of death for kids ages 1 to 4, and one of the top killers of children ages 5 to 14. The drowning rate is higher for white kids in the younger group, but much higher for Black, American, Indian, and Alaska Native children in the older group. Drownings of very young children sometimes occur in bathtubs, but most, like Stewie Leonard's, occur in swimming pools. The Stu Leonard's grocery chain offers a Disney-like shopping experience featuring food-promoting animatronic characters like a dancing banana, a mooing cow, and singing avocados. But several of its stores also have animatronic creatures that seem out of place. A life-jacketed duck named Stewie, who sings about how not to drown. The duck is named for the son of Stewie Leonard, the grocery chain's chief executive. The boy was 21 months old when he drowned during a family vacation on the island of St. Martin in 1989. More than a dozen adults and kids have gathered at a birthday party for Stewie's older sister, who was turning 3. Stewie Leonard was outside hanging balloons, and his wife was inside baking a cake. I saw Stewie outside, and I assumed that he, Leonard, was watching him, said his wife, Kim, noting that other relatives also were in the area of the pool. We never communicate with each other. You got him? Said Kim Leonard, now 65. When everyone's watching, nobody's watching. There was a couple of balloons floating in the water, Leonard, 71, recalled, and after a few minutes, sort of everybody was like, "Where's Stewie?" Unfortunately, I was the one who found him. He was face down in the pool. His death led to the couple to start a foundation that pays for children's swimming lessons and promotes drowning prevention. So why are more kids drowning? Unintentional child drowning deaths in the U.S. fell from about 2,000 a year in the 1980s to below 1,000 a year by the early 2000s, thanks in part to public awareness campaigns, expanded access to swimming lessons, and adoption of pool fencing laws. Between 2000 and 2019, health officials saw a 38% drop. But then the trend reversed, the number of children drowning deaths rising from 756 in 2019 to 865 in 2024, the most recent year for which complete data is available. The bulk of them were children younger than 5. The child drowning death rate also increased slightly from 1.1 to 1.2%. It's 100,000 children. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Lockport Union-Sun Journal on the Agri-Frontier Radio Reading Service. So, why are more kids drowning? Unintentional child drowning deaths in the U.S. fell. What happened? The COVID-19 pandemic interrupted swimming lessons and lifeguard training programs and contributed to a national lifeguard shortage. Meanwhile, some data suggests an increase in swimming pool construction and increases in unsupervised swimming. Wow. Okay, now let's go to the Tuesday, June 30th issue. And there's all kinds of stuff in here. Let's see. Oh, extreme temperatures arrive. Dangerous heat, oppressed humidity forecasted for area. You remember that we had that big heat wave, and now it's like smoke everywhere. I don't know if you've been outside. Try not to go outside. It smells like fire out there. The sky is all hazy, like it looks like a fog, like a light fog. It's from the smoke fires from Ontario. So we're going to go back to the first issue that we have here, which is Thursday, July 2nd. So in Niagara Falls, more Niagara County families could soon receive help paying for childcare after New York boosted funding for its child care assistance program by more than $1 billion as part of the state's budget. A part of this year's state budget passed in May, the state is increasing its various child care programming funding from $1.7 billion to $4.5 billion, helping further pave the way for universal child care in New York. There's a multi-pronged approach here, said Office of Children and Family Services Commissioner Damia Harris-Madden. We're going to invest on the school side with pre-kindergarten services and then for the daycare providers and the home-based providers. They access the Child Care Assistance Program. The CCAP saw its funding increase to $3 billion, which is a $1.2 billion increase from the previous fiscal year, to create more child care seats. That is made up of $2.4 billion in base funding and the rest for supplemental funding to help backfill countries and counties that exceed their allocations. So let's see what else we have in here. We have some, unfortunately, deaths to announce. There was Gerald Rosenberg, who passed away on June 25th. Justin Genter of Cambria passed away on June 29th. So milkweed is more than monarch butterflies. Over the past 15 years or so, milkweed gardens have been the in thing for gardeners and nature lovers. I appreciate every one of you have been undertaking the task of growing these plants to help the beleaguered monarch regain its status as the king of our butterflies. Since the 1990s, the population of migrating monarchs has declined by 80%. Your efforts have helped to slow down that loss and in some years led to significant, albeit periodic and temporary rebounds. Keep plugging away. This war will be won via a resilient and patient group effort. While tending to your butterfly garden, stop and smell the roses. Well, smell milkweed. Those flowers are powerful in their scent, and such a beautiful aroma reminiscent of lilac. Upon smelling it, it becomes obvious why so many pollinators and other insects love the flowers. They are the creatures I want you to appreciate. Monarch butterflies get all the love and attention, and deservedly so. But peer into the flowers and you'll see an incredibly diverse and beautiful world of insect life. From beetles to bugs to bees, your milkweed garden is an environment unto itself, one you created or steward to help one species more than help so many more. An insect that you're likely to see is a red milkweed beetle. Elongated in shape, reaching a half-inch in length, these beetles are, as the name implies, red. The brilliant crimson body has large black dots, and its head is topped off by long antennae, hence their other older longier of milkweed longhorn. The entire life cycle of these beetles depended on milkweed as larvae. They live underground, feeding on the roots of the plant. The adults eat the leaves, buds, and flowers. Because of their hunger for milkweeds, many butterflies enthusiasts see them as a pest, a threat to the monarchs. Please don't. The native beetles have just as much right to the plants as the monarchs do. They don't kill the plant. If you're not, they are not predatory. They won't eat monarch eggs or caterpillars. Milkweeds are, though, frequented by some predatory beetles, but know that they aren't feeding on baby monarchs. Instead, they feast on insects that can harm milkweeds, especially the oleander aphid. Well, let's read. He's married to the tube. This is like a Dear Anne, but it's Anne Landers, but it is a Dear Anne. Her name is Anne Lane. So it says, Dear Annie, my husband is one of those people who always needs the TV on. Eating dinner? TV on. Getting dressed? TV on. Even working, he'll have it on. Muted if necessary, but on. I am not anti-TV, but I do feel it steals from the quality time we could be sharing. When we eat, he looks at the screen instead of at me. Beyond that, I worry about why he's so uncomfortable with silence. I meditate almost daily and find stillness important. His constant need for distraction looks like running from his own thoughts. How do I bring this up without sounding like a nagging wife? So Annie says, dear, turn off the TV. First, drop the fear of sounding like a nagging wife. You won't feel comfortable asking for anything if that's always in the way. Skip the broad conversation about his need for noise. People rarely receive, I think you're avoiding your thoughts, with open arms. Instead, get a couple of clear boundaries. No TV at dinner is a good start. Frame it as something you want, some time to actually connect rather than something you're taking away. Another, dear Annie. Recently, my brother's health has taken a nosedive. He's only 33 and he's always been pretty active, but he's gained about 50 pounds and eats fast food at least once a day. I know he's unhappy with his appearance. What I'm worried about is his health. Our father died young of a heart attack, and if he doesn't take care of himself, he's headed in the same direction. I'm just not sure how to get him through to him. He says he wants to work out and eat better, but then he loses motivation. I've offered to cook him meals and work out with him, but he always makes excuses or bails. Nothing is changing, and I'm getting worried that he won't take this serious until it's too late. So she says, Annie says, you're already tried the hands-on approach, and he's not biting. The nudge probably needs to come from somewhere else. Ask him to get a full physical and blood work. It's a reasonable thing. A 33-year-old with your family history should do. When a doctor puts the numbers in front of him, cholesterol, blood pressure, the works, it lands differently than a worried sibling. It's clear that you love him, but you might not be the right messenger. You can point him towards someone whose job it is to make the stakes impossible to ignore. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Lockport Union-Sun Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. So in Las Vegas, okay, in other news, that all-you-can-eat buffet they always have is fading. Las Vegas had a cool fall evening after the end of World War II. Las Vegas watched officialdom and cafe society turn out for the opening of America's first all-you-can-eat buffet, a local paper wrote. It was a big night in a small town that dreamed of hungry visitors. The glazed ham and prime rib in the El Rancho, Vegas, were signs that American food was changing. The space race and arms race made Cold War headlines. The arms race was important. Genetics, chemicals, and motorized equipment nearly tripled U.S. farm production between 1948 and 2017. What to do with all that food? So this is the beginning. At least 3 Vegas legends claimed inventing the all-you-can-eat buffet. The best-known tale says that promoter Herb McDonald put cheese and cold cuts on a bar one night. Gamblers walking by said they were hungry, and the buffet was born, read McDonald's obituary. Other casinos opened buffets for eating in between gambling, says Michael Green, a history professor at the University of Nevada. For one lump sum, people carried a plate past salads, meats, pastas, and seafood, trying a bit of everything before going back for more. That last part's important. As the all-you-can-eat buffet became a hit, its origin story was disputed. Stories attributed the buffet to the El Rancho are dismissed by Vegas historian Jeffrey Carlson. He said it couldn't have been that simple. He says, citing another version that attributes it to the mob that helped found Las Vegas. Indiana Metropolis, how Las Vegas started the 21st century. Hal K. Rothman pins buffet a mobster David Berman, who moved from Iowa in 1944 as Jewish gangsters snatched up local hotels and casinos. Berman hired a chef to feed gamblers who laid lox, whitefish, herring, and other Jewish brunch delicacies and a long table. The Las Vegas tradition, and the buffet was born. The end? However it all started, all-you-can-eat buffets spread across the Republic to restaurants like Golden Corral and Ponderosa. Then they started losing out to casual dining outlets like Olive Garden or Chili's, food industry experts say. Then in 2020, COVID-19 dealt a blow that persists to this day. Suddenly, piles of food sitting out for everyone to grab weren't quite as appealing. Longtime Las Vegas food journalist Al Mancini says buffets will always have a place here. There's visceral reaction is just loading up that tray, he said. People still love that, and I think they always will. I think buffets are great because you can get a variety of different things. Try things you never tried before. That's my opinion anyway. So we have some more of those Dear Annies, I believe. Let's see what we have here. Let me find that one. Okay, A Mother in the Middle is a Dear Annie. Dear Annie, I'm ready for advice about a dear friend, Meg, who we've known more than 40 years. She has a son, Rodney, who went to high school with our son and who has always been on the edge of being an outlaw. Over the years, we've seen Rodney continuously depend on his parents to finance his escapades. We saw him wreck his car and then his parents, so that for a time the family had no means of transportation. We saw Meg pay for a very expensive college education where he only took one course, bowling. We saw Rodney join a fraternity where he quickly became an alcoholic. Rodney worked for his father's business and had a child out of wedlock. The mother of his child married a responsible man and has raised their child, thankfully. Today, Meg's husband has a severe case of Alzheimer's, and she cares for him in their home, though he really needs to be in a facility with 24-hour supervision. Recently, the mother of Rodney's child found him unconscious after drinking too much and took him to Meg's house. She then took him to a rehab facility. He's been there for 2 weeks now, and the bill is up to $18,000. The facility told Meg that if she doesn't pay for his continued care, he will be discharged. My question is, should Meg continue to finance Rodney's outrageous behavior and risk having no money for her husband's care and her retirement, or should she allow the facility to put Rodney out on the street? So Annie said, Dear Choosing, from what you described, Meg has spent several years trying to save Rodney from the consequences of his choices. Unfortunately, no amount of money can make someone get sober. Meg's responsibility is not only to her son, but also to her husband and herself, especially given the realities of his Alzheimer's. If Rodney has any chance of turning his life around, he must get sober, and resources are available to him beyond his mother's checkbook. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is stop standing between an adult child and the consequences of his actions. But as difficult as it is to watch a friend struggle, this decision isn't yours to make, it's Meg's. There's another one. Dear Annie, I wanted to thank you for cautioning my OCD nightmare about their casual use of the term OCD. Obsessive compulsive disorder doesn't just run in my mother's side of the family. It gallops at full speed and hands out party favors. My grandmother, her sister, my great aunt, my own brother, my mother, and I have it. I laugh about it with my husband at times because on rare occasions it can be funny. Don't get me started on wrinkles in the sheets. But other times, no, it's not funny at all, and it can be very, very unsettling. So thank you for telling my OCD nightmare to be careful. I'd add that if they really think they have OCD, help can be found if necessary. And Annie says, Dear Runs in the Family, thank you for sharing your family's experience. Your letter made me smile, but the point behind it is an important one. OCD is much more than being neat and organized, and I'm glad you remind readers that help is available for those who are struggling. So here's some articles on In Good Taste. They said tips to keep your tomatoes from breakers to ripen red. One of the simple joys of summer is access to great tasting tomatoes. Whether grown and picked at color break from a home garden or brought fully ripened to the local grocery market or grocery store, tomatoes are a treat. There are some tips and tricks to help you get the most from the tomato harvest or purchase, according to Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service expert Joe Zabini, PhD, Agriculture Extension Small Acreage Horticulturist for the Texas A&M AgriLife Research and Extension Center in Dallas. He said timing's everything. Nothing will taste as great as a tomato at its peak, so timing is a major factor in considering when ripening tomatoes. They can ripen in days or weeks, depending on the variety and stage at which they were picked, so buy or pick accordingly. If all your tomato plants are full simultaneously and there is no possible way to eat them as fast as they need to be picked, there are ways to space out the ripening process to allow for extended use. Any tomato reaching the breaking stage will continue to ripen off the vine. He said this is the stage where the bottom of the tomato has started to change from green to yellow. The best place to let tomatoes ripen is on your kitchen counter. Ideally, ripe or ripening tomatoes prefer temperatures around the mid-60s, but he said room temperature is safe in most homes. However, breaker stage tomatoes can be stored in a refrigerator to halt the ripening process. This allows you to pull them from the fridge and let them ripen as needed. Once the tomatoes are again at room temperature, they will usually continue to ripen process over several days. It can be classified as ripening, but even if it doesn't work vine yet, even though it doesn't look like it's on the vine yet, it has all the sugars. For gardeners, while it may seem like a good idea to keep the tomato on the vine until you are ready to finish them off ripening, because they still have some wonderful flavor, make sure you store these tomatoes with a little space between them on this counter or in a container to allow air circulation. Then they have flavored butters. So a lot of people are grilling, I guess, with flavored butters on their, steaks and whatever, the chicken. They have a roasted garlic and rosemary butter and a lemon dill butter. So it makes about a half a cup. So for the roasted garlic, you need a head of garlic, a tablespoon of olive oil, salt, pepper, half a stick of butter, a tablespoon of freshly chopped rosemary, some garlic powder. Then you heat the oven to 375 degrees. Top off a half inch off the garlic and place the garlic head on a piece of foil. Drizzle with olive oil and season with salt and pepper. So you're going to have baked garlic. You gently squeeze the head of garlic until all the cloves pop out, and you finally chop the cloves and add to a medium bowl. Then you add the rest of the ingredients, and now you have butter. Let the compound butter chill, covered in the refrigerator for at least an hour. Lemon dill is the same thing. Makes a half a cup. You have a half a stick of butter, a teaspoon of finely chopped dill, 2 tablespoons of grated lemon zest, a tablespoon of lemon juice, and a quarter teaspoon of salt. And you mix that all together, and again you put that in the refrigerator. Sounds pretty good. And then you put that on whatever you want. I think the lemon dill sounds like it would be good on fish, doesn't it? Wow. So it's a great time, I guess, to read about American history, they say. So this summer you can't just get enough. Just one more American history book, one more tale of the Old West or the founders or our accomplishments. Won't that make you happy? 1 or 4 more books during the sesquicentennial year? Perhaps 4 more books like these. Let's start early in American history with Thy Will Be Done by George Washington's Legacy of Slavery and The Fight for American Memory by John Garrison. The fact is that our first president held slaves since his death in 1799, and especially in modern times we wrestle with that, and how it affects the way we perceive Washington and his legacy. Though documents from the people who knew him and those who thought they did, this book will open conversations, controversy, and maybe minds. The sesquicentennial isn't the only anniversary being marked this year. It's also been 150 years since George Custer went to Littlehorn. And in Vengeance, The Last Dance of Custer, Crazy Horse, and City Bull by Tom Calvin. That's a book. You'll get a vivid idea of what went down in Montana in June of 1876. There's drama in this book and violence and murder. Readers will be glad to see that Calvin doesn't just focus on Custer. Instead, he offers Native American points of view as well. Well, that's pretty cool. Most of the time, we don't hear the American Indians' point of view. And here's a future review. A survey says, this is Family Feud. Let's play the feud. In 1974, TV game show producer Mark Goodman pitched a new quiz bowl he called Oddball and the Fast Company. He changed the name when he decided to have families play against each other. He originally wanted actor William Shatner to host, was also considering seasoned game show hosts Jeff Edwards and Jack Nars. So British comedian Richard Dawson appeared on Hogan's Heroes from 65 to 71 and was then a regular on the Goodman-Todson show Match Game. His contract specified he would be permitted to audition to be host of any new Godson-Todman game shows. He heard about Godman's new concept, exercised the clause in his contract, and won the hosting job. So the show debuted on ABC 8 days after the U.S. bicentennial. The first question Dawson posed to the contest: name a famous George family feud. Won an Emmy Award in 1977, and then Dawson won an Emmy for hosting the next year. The show won another Emmy in 2019. Current host.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability,